In 1993, Marc Jacobs presented the Grunge collection for Perry Ellis, named after the Seattle subculture that was emerging in the 80s. The collection featured shaggy beanies, flowy old flower dresses, and skirts that were actually plaid shirts. And Marc Jacobs himself said that it was supposed to be a very deluxe version of this grunge attitude. Some of the fashion literate crowd thought it was a new and exciting look for the fashion scene, especially the youth, the type of New York college students that looked up to Marc Jacobs. The majority found it very confusing, however, to say the least, due to Perry Ellis's heritage of being classy, mature, and respectable. Regardless of the reception, Marc Jacobs was very proud of the collection and decided to send a few pieces to Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love, very popular grunge icons at the time. When Courtney Love was asked decades later about this gesture, she replied, "Do you know what we did with those clothes? We burned them. We were punkers. We didn't like that kind of thing." The entire Seattle grunge scene did not appreciate this collection as a whole, and they were disgusted and shocked to find that their lifestyle was being glamorized and put on a high fashion runway. This was one of the first times in high fashion that subculture got bastardized, and it's been happening ever since. Hello, my name is Dolce Jeans, and today we're going to be talking about why subcultural representation in fashion, and especially high fashion, will suck almost 100% of the time. If you're new around here and this is your first video of mine, please go ahead and like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, let's first look at what a subculture is, right, and how the whole idea of subculture started. Subcultural theory was originally developed in the 1920s by the Chicago School because they were trying to study why certain deviant actions and certain deviant behaviors arose in society because of social problems, and why certain ethnic groups or people of certain financial stature, usually lower financial stature, were more likely to get involved in criminal activities and deviant delinquent behavior in general. Marginalization or isolation or prejudice of a specific group of people in a very concentrated area leads to them grouping up to try and fight against this ordeal and survive together as a group. They all have these adversities in common and they're all trying to beat them. Now, real people who used to be in real subcultures used to die to live just to try and get by because of how society was treating them for trying to be who they really were, or just living the life that they lived, but maybe it didn't fit into the social norms, like being homeless, being, I don't know, ugly, wanted to be a different gender, not feeling comfortable in their skin, being from a certain social group in a certain area, things like that that are kind of othered and on the sidewalk of society, not in the mainstream. Even if you were just weird in high school, that could cause you to find a subculture with a lot of other people that are also weird in high school. Like, you've probably seen that before, you've experienced that before, or witnessed it at least. The point is, subcultures back then were so authentic it was almost impossible to fake because these things weren't just people playing dress up or getting together and playing a game. They were born out of necessity because there are people who are really out here getting their lives saved by finding out that there are other people who are just like them who experience the same problems as them. But of course, the ideals and the idea itself of a subculture changed over time because of these type of journeys and stories getting romanticized when there's nothing romantic about it if you're thinking about the people who are actually going through it. Like, put yourself in their shoes. These people weren't having a romantic time. They were just trying to get by. But from the outsider looking in, obviously it's such a beautiful story to tell about how, oh, you guys had nothing, you guys were othered, you guys were treated so badly, but you made it out. Rose growing from the cracks in the, like, no. And of course, social media messes up a lot of stuff. So the romanticization and almost fetishization of a subculture got sped up actually because of social media and sharing these images around, sharing these stories around. Obviously it's good to spread awareness, but before social media there are people like Marc Jacobs in New York who really witnessed these marginalized people and decided to capture their attitude on the runway in a very deluxe version. Like, kind of weird, bro. So yeah, let's talk about grunge now. Now, grunge was a subculture spawned in the 1980s in Seattle, and it involved characteristics like dressing down, dressing in secondhand clothes, torn up clothes, and the music that was involved. They had artists like Eddie Vedder and Kurt Cobain, of course, where their lyrics would scream about isolation, anger, angst, not feeling right in the world, societal problems, anti-establishment, punk elements as well. Grunge was a small thing for a while until there was critical acclaim for bands like Pearl Jam and Nirvana, and then it just kind of blew up into this commercial cash grab, unfortunately, because it resonated with the most profitable demographic in the world, the youth. MTV were heavily pushing Nirvana and Pearl Jam, and of course, Nirvana had one of the most iconic music videos out at the time, Smells Like Teen Spirit. And they saw this scrawny white kid in these flannel clothes and this baggy ripped up jeans, but his voice was so crazy and the things he was saying is so crazy, like, here we are now, entertain us. And that resonated a lot with the kids. And like I just said, when you get the kids, the big corporations will come calling, knocking on your door, trying to capitalize on your authenticity. These kids also try to imitate Kurt Cobain's wardrobe, starting to wear these messed up, tattered garments like torn up flannels and ripped up jeans. Cobain himself was a fashion icon at the time because of how he would cross dress sometimes and appear on the stage in makeup and things like that. So Cobain was very authentic, but just wanted to go against the grain of society and wanting to go against the norms. Why can't you wear a dress? Why can't you wear makeup as a man and things like that? He was punk at heart, right? But he was starting something new because of his look and his sound. So even though he was really punk at heart, he was the leader of the new grunge sound, right? So we can observe the authenticity of grunge and why it was so popular with the youth and why it resonated so much with the youth, and then why these corporations tried to treat it like a big cash grab and try to package it, capture the essence, and wholesale it out to the world. We can observe that, and then we can then deduce and understand why Marc Jacobs' approach was so problematic and a bit ugly. Grunge itself was like that entire antithesis of the things that Marc Jacobs were doing and what he wanted to do. And then he had the nerve to go send his clothes to what Courtney Love and Kurt Cobain, he ate or something. I'm so glad they burned those damn clothes. I don't have any hate towards Marc Jacobs, by the way. I love Heaven and stuff, but I just think this was so. Should have thought this through, Now, regardless of if you thought the grunge clothes in that collection were good or not, the fact that Marc Jacobs tried to package, deluxify in his own words, and then put these type of attitudes on display in the most high, pompous, exclusive, rich, snobbish, pretentious space possible, which is a high fashion runway, is so ridiculous, nonsensical, hypocritical, considering that he was doing it at Perry Ellis as well, and just straight up tone deaf. And spoiler alert, that's the problem with almost all representation of subcultures in high fashion, in my opinion. I'd go as far as to say that subcultures should never be depicted in high fashion because morally it just doesn't make sense, and it's always going to be a direct contradiction as long as the subculture is subcultural, or unless it's quiet luxury or something stupid like that. But that's not really a subculture because there's no culture there. That's an aesthetic. There's no culture in that. That's a look. Mob Boss 5, that's a look. So yeah, it will never make sense. But if you are going to attempt to do that still, there are definitely some ways you can make it a little bit nicer and more respectable, in my opinion. Okay, this video is going to take a turn towards skating, the subculture of skating. We're looking at skating on a subcultural level. Let's talk about the Japanese high fashion brand. Well, is it really high fashion? It's on Paris Fashion Week runway, so I don't know. But let's talk about Kidill. Founded in 2014 by Hiroaki Siyasu, the designer is very influenced by the punk, graffiti, grunge, skateboarding, and literature that he experienced in the 1990s. He takes the element of past experience and infuses them with the modernity of the new age delinquent in mind. The specific collection I'm going to be talking about from this brand today is the Fall/Winter 2023-2024 collection Enfant Terrible. I hope that's how you pronounce it. I'm not good with French, guys. The main goal of this collection was to capture the mood of 90s skaters and the freedom of their spirit and their wardrobe. Suyasu also named this collection Enfant Terrible because he wanted to capture the feeling of the late adolescent that was being forced to transfer into adulthood, because of time. And they had this rebellious youth spirit of not knowing where they were in the world. And now it's they really don't know where to go and they feel displaced and they don't have it all together, but at least they have that one thing. And in this case, it was skateboarding. And for a lot of the models that actually skated for the show, yes, not walked, skated, we'll get to that in a second, they felt plagued by the same feeling of not knowing where to go, feeling a little bit too old, not knowing who they are at this point in their life, and just, being a bit scared of the real world. But the only escape that these models had actually were skating. Suyasu also spoke about this collection, saying that he is in love with real purity and the purity that comes from pure people who just have this one thing in their heart, or this one unwavering thing in their heart. And he cites Kurt Cobain and Sid Vicious as icons and inspirations of this purity that he's talking about. And Suyasu also spoke about how refurbishing and recreating old clothes with his DIY feeling actually saved his life and forced him to, well, not forced, but inspired him to move to London to start, studying fashion formally and things like that. And how that's his one thing that he had when he was growing up as a disenfranchised youth. Now, this description of a man whose life was saved by his DIY passion and also the description of the skaters who, according to them in a YouTube short film that they did for the collection, got their lives saved by skating and skate to escape their problems. All sounds very authentically like a subculture to me, just maybe a little bit. When you think about their approach, I mean, skating always will kind of be a subculture no matter how popular it does get. It will always be a subculture if we're being real. Some of the skaters in the short film speak about how their problems disappear for maybe 30 minutes to an hour if they just skate, or for however long they skate, and when they skate, they don't think about anything. Their life is just skate. They don't know where they'll be without skating. One of the skaters asks another one, "Hey, where do you think you'll be in the next 15 years?" And they're like, "I don't even think I'm gonna make it that far." But they ask, "Will you still be skating?" And they immediately just said, "Of course." Like, just to show you the dedication these people have towards skating, there's no other option. Like, they say they see the whole world differently. They see a rail differently, stairs differently whenever you're a real skater. And whenever that's in your heart, your entire life just changes. And I know I've been saying that these things save their lives, but one of them actually straight up did say skateboarding saved their lives and their life escaped. Now you're probably wondering about how this relates to subcultures on the runway and how it can be done tastefully. We're about to get into that right now. The skaters that were used in the short film on YouTube are also the same skaters that ended up skating on the runway. And yes, Suyasu didn't just have them walk the runway like a regular fashion show, they actually skated across it. There was actually like a ramp and I think a rail and everything that they could do tricks on. Now that's good, but wait, there's more. The skaters that were involved were either professional DC signed skaters or street skaters that were found on the street of Paris. I mention that because I personally feel if you're going to be doing a collection about subcultures, then at least include some of the people who are really in there, right? And not only is he including professionals, but he's also including these people who just live and die about it for the love of the game, like the street skaters. I think it's very good to be inclusive if you're going to be trying to steal and take the image of a subculture. Including them is just a nice touch, you know? You're making caricature type pieces of this real lifestyle that people really live, so at least, throw them in there, you know what I mean? This collection is not as pretentious and exploratory or exploitative, I'll figure it out, as the Marc Jacobs Grunge collection, because Marc Jacobs was just somebody looking from the outside in, but Suyasu himself actually skated a lot as a kid in high school, and he also was very involved in skate and pop culture in general, so he's gonna be around that and actually be involved in it if he's really like that. And he is. I know that sounds so informal to say like if he's really like that, but I hope you understand what I mean. And to make it even better for his case, he actually collaborated with DC to make a few shoes and a few shirts. I actually have one of the shirts. I love it so much. It's so cool to look at. But yeah, the shoes were just skate shoes with spikes on the side in these really interesting colorways. So both of the brands like spirits were mixed with the spikes on top of the skate shoes. Kidill with DC. Not too creative, not too crazy, but at least DC, the people who are actually providing the skaters with him, DC actually reached out to him for the collection. At least he involved them directly with a collection about skaters. He could have just went the Dior Louis Vuitton route and just copied the Osiris silhouette, the D3 original Osiris silhouettes, but he actually worked with an actual skate brand to make a real shoe. So not saying he deserves all the glory, but hats off to him, I guess. Because like I said, I still don't think something like this will 100% make sense. But this collection differed from the Marc Jacobs Grunge collection, where it was more like an inclusive, well-informed, from the heart celebration of the youth who doesn't have much, doesn't have their life together, but again, they have that one thing. And I personally thought it was a bit charming. I thought it was really charming. This is one of my favorite collections ever because I think the clothes are beautiful too. I love it. So this may seem very biased, it probably is, but I still think that what I'm saying makes sense. So I'm not just trying to do promo for Kidill, okay? So we see that legit inclusions of subcultural life on the runway can still be done and appreciated. But when you have Balenciaga making $1,000+ denim that are literally labeled skater denim with busted out knees and heel bite, I'm not one of those people who are like, oh, I can get the same look at home or at the thrift shop. No, because the cut and the materials are way better. But I think if you're gonna be spending that much money on skater denim, then you're a bit silly. I'm sorry. You got scanned, you got stunned on, they put a stun on you, bro. And it's especially shell shocking for me when I go out and skate, or when I go out and look at people who are obviously skaters or just skated with, like, they have their boards in hand, and I'm looking at them with smiling, just with real admiration, just thinking like, do y'all know that y'all are the blueprint? Like, I wish I could just show y'all what they're doing just to look like y'all, bro, and y'all are just living life. Like, maybe I'm like Suyasu in that regard, where I just have such a real admiration for pure people and the purity of the world, because those kids don't know how much I love them, bro. Like, Some of them look just like me too. I'm talking about kids, like they're my age or even older, and they're really just living it, doing themselves, being authentic, and then they're the ones who are getting bastardized and copied on a rack for $1,000. Like, hats off to them, man. Brands like Jaded London and Zara doing mud wash jeans with purposeful heel bite. Brands like Acne Studios making the ugliest destroyed jeans you've ever seen, bleached, thrashed, and dirty, all to look like those kids, bro. Like, it's really weird. Really, really weird for hundreds of dollars, right? Crazy. But subcultures don't just get bastardized on a high fashion level. In fact, they get bastardized the most on the level that you and me live on, which is just the direct, useful consumer. Now we are going to be taking a turn to TikTok. Okay, newsflash: every single core that you've seen on TikTok probably was a real thing that just got democratized. That's what we're going to be using today. Democratized. They democratized subcultures like skate, rave, visual K, even workwear, which wasn't even a culture. It was just like an actual thing, got like turned out. Like punk, of course, got so bastardized to the point where everything is contrived and punk doesn't even have a meaning anymore. Coquette, don't get me started on that. Gyaru, kinda scene, emo, goth, etc. You get the idea. Now for more fashion based subcultures like Coquette and Gyaru, it's a bit more tricky to grasp because there's not much more other than the looks, so it's not that much of a bastardization when it is fashion at the heart of it almost. But for something like Visual K, it's a little bit less tricky because music is the main part of Visual K, and then of course the garments come like with it, but it's still like music. So when you have regular people just walking around in these big fur hoodies with like the raccoon fur on the top and like the Yasuyuki Ishii or Le Grand Blue leather flared pants and stuff, it's like, whoa. And I'm also a little bit guilty of this too. The thing about a lot of these subcultures and looks and these outfits is that they weren't just outfits, they actually served a purpose, that actually served a function. The function was either to actually help what they needed to help with like whatever activities that you were going to be partaking in these clothes, like maybe skaters or ravers with the big pants, or the function of immediate visual recognition and association to the subculture. In terms of actual function, it was like how Carhartt has like the hammer loop on the side of the pants. I didn't even know what that was for a long time until somebody literally explained it to me. Yeah, because Carhartt was like actually for workers who actually needed hammer loops. And then you have brands like Alix now turning it into some weird buckle thing or whatever they just did with it. Like, it's really weird now. It just gets really bad for those subcultures that were purposefully made and meant to accept people who were othered and pushed away from society, and now it's just getting like pieces of these subcultures are getting stripped and pulled away into outfits just to get the look. But these people weren't there for the look. They were there because they actually needed that safe haven and that solace from society. And this is how people were protected and people navigated through life, even if it was just a phase. Nowadays, a lot of these people that don these clothes and these styles and step out looking like that never actually felt the social connection that the original people who associated with these subcultures felt. Now, this is like a low-key bad example, but it's like when I put on an NFL jersey for like the Green Bay Packers or something because I like how dark the green is, and somebody says, hey, you know about the Packers? Who's your favorite player on the team? And I can't tell them shit. And I'm just like, oh, I just like the jersey. It's called appropriation. Appropriation. And it's bad. As a result of appropriation, subcultures have become a disingenuous game of who's who, trying to figure out who's really that and who's really not, because there's people running around in costumes instead of uniforms, and that's the problem. Now, I did a video on how aesthetics got messed up and screwed over in fashion, and that video has most of my thoughts on things like this, so please, I recommend you watch it. It's impossible to miss on my channel at this point. But all in all, emo is lost. The word punk is so strung out and bastardized and just turned out nowadays that you just have to keep that type of feeling to yourself. You can't even say outwardly that, oh, I feel punk, because you're just gonna look like a dork. The TikTok or explore page looks of these subcultures are changing what it means to actually be a part of these subcultures, to the point where having the look is more important than having the mindset. I'm all for social evolution and pushing forward society, but it's not social evolution if the core of these things are getting left behind. The loss of subcultures are happening every day before our eyes, and they're getting pushed further and further on the ground. Now, one might say that's a good thing and that we're actually returning to where we need to be, but in terms of the traditional ones, I think it's just going to get worse and worse until there's nothing left but a hollow shell of generations of fellowship. And by hollow shell, I mean an outfit to wear. That was the end of the video. That was Oof, I really hope that video was good. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe again. I really enjoyed talking about the topic. I'll be doing more commentary style videos in the future, I believe, more fashion reviews, more educational videos as well. I just really appreciate if you like and subscribe. I appreciate all the support. Thank you so much. Be authentic. I hope you took away something from this video for real. You know exactly what's wrong. Don't contribute. Okay? Please.